Welcome to the Slice Pod, where we uncover the stories of fresh emerging managers across the early stage venture landscape. Today, we have a special episode where we're sharing the top 5 lessons that we've learned from our conversations here at Slice. These lessons capture the essence of what it means to build, innovate, and redefine venture capital as an emerging manager. Let's jump right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
The traditional accelerator model is evolving. We've seen innovative approaches from all the managers that we've interviewed. Someone like Ashley, for example, leverages her coalition network to bring in subject matter expertise during diligence, while Owen does something similar in healthcare. And Reed and John have an impressive LP strategy, bringing together over 90 LPs in a sub $20 million fund. They use that broad network to help connect founders to the right resources at the right time. Bob, how do you see the traditional accelerator model evolving?
So first, celebratory mood, because we've done over 10 episodes over the last couple of months, and we had some incredible folks that you just mentioned as our guests, and very thankful for them to have joined us, and thankful for you for being the amazing producer you are, a little circus that we call Slice. Yes, it is evolving. I think there is what I call the unbundling of the accelerator model. What I've been seeing personally as an investor in early stage founders over the last few years is that the luster of the accelerator badging is no longer as intriguing to the top founders. Some may still want to go to Y Combinator because it gives you access to a pretty wide network. But besides the orange little hut, there is very little value for a founder to be going to a Techstars or a 500 Startups. That's not where it happens. And what we've seen in 2021 with the massive liquidity that the post-COVID boom created, there is a lot of capital available in angel investing. And we've seen institutionalized angel funds like Pietro being able to cut 100K, 200K, 300K checks and pulling that first check, 3 to 500K, split among 4, 5, 6 people. The number one skill set of a founder is fundraising. If you don't know how to raise capital properly, it's not just a matter of pulling in money, but structuring your fundraise, structuring dilution for yourself and your shareholders properly. It doesn't matter how good of a product you have, how good of an idea you have. It's just not going to work. And so what I see the best ones do is that they pull together as little capital as they can from a syndicate of people that can help them in a much more targeted way than an accelerator would. I don't think this is going to stop. We're going from using our own money to raising LP money and deploying those. And this is the whole Slice thesis. And I don't think next year we're going to stop finding these incredible sub $20 million funds. Cutting tiny collaborative checks is going to become the norm. The best founders will not come out of an accelerator anymore. They may still do it as a second step. I see a bunch of really sharp founders raising their pre-seed round and then applying to go to YC in the second stage, just to have access to Bookface and that network. But that's the only one people ask me how to get in. If somebody's interested in doing it, I'm not interested in funding them. Maybe that's just me. I'm biased by the options available to me as an investor. But I do think the alpha is shifting to a different market.
Do you think unbundling this accelerator model will make it more accessible or more complex for founders?
Raising the bar, for sure. As a founder, if you do not have a network already at your disposal, then you're not going to be able to raise capital that easily versus like just doing an application and getting in. Should be pretty easy. I think what's going to make it the hardest is going to be for LPs, particularly institutional LPs, the ability to deploy at the earliest stages. It's getting so fragmented and distributed that it's really hard to be able to say, just cut a $5 million check in 150 funds versus one entity and let them distribute that across the set. And so that's definitely going to make it more complex. As any unbundling, it's going to make it more complex and fragmented. For founders, I do think this is a better model. It will make it harder, but I would argue that if you do not have a network of people ready to back you from the start, you need to do your homework and get that network before your first fundraise. The best founders are the ones that understand that. And it's not just, I had this brilliant idea and I have this brilliant product and people are just going to throw money at me. That's not how it works. People have to get on with the program. I also think it's much more fluid as well. It used to be that you have to go see your investors in person, pitch them in person. Through COVID, that all changed. I don't think that anybody pitches in person anymore, at least for a pre-seed round.
You just talked about how LPs will become more distributed into the early stages. With the unbundling of the accelerator model, what challenges do you think come with using LPs as a resource for founders? How do you manage those expectations as an emerging manager, trying to get them involved? They're very important people and different from how you approach a founder.
Especially if they're small checks and not that engaged. It's going to be interesting to see how this new manager set is able to deliver on expectations. Raising a small fund from smaller terms, LPs, which tend to be a little bit more flaky. They may be extremely excited about backing you and about backing your portfolio, and then their core business may be experiencing some sort of distress and they're no longer available. What you thought was going to be an asset for you and your portfolio. It's the lesson that you learn as a founder when you raise from angels. A lot of angels will promise you things that they cannot deliver on. Likewise, a lot of managers will think that they can get access to their LP base, which is why I actually think no matter how odd Pietro's and John and Reed strategies are of having this gigantic set of LPs relative to the fund size that they have, it's probably a very good idea because you diversify that risk, right? That you don't have 3 or 4 people and that's all you can rely on. If somebody defaults on their promise, there is like another 3 or 4 people that can probably step in and take up that chore. So the difficulty, I think it will come once you have 3, 4, 5 of these funds, 200, 300 LPs and 100 companies in the portfolio. How, as a solo GP, do you connect all these dots and keep things straight? Maybe AI will play a role into that. Maybe we'll have like very capable agents, superhuman type EAs that are just written in code that can surface proactively. How can people help each other in real life? Right now, it's the early innings and it looks easy, but as we go towards twos, we're going to see some cracks in the model for sure.
These emerging managers aren't making big bucks right now. Contrary to what a lot of people think, emerging managers aren't in it for the salary. How do you think they can create resource-rich ecosystems without large budgets, without burning out every week? John at Success Venture Partners writes a very long and personal email to all of his 90 plus LPs every single Friday. Is it something like that you have to do to maintain this tight-knit ecosystem? What does it really take?
Hustle. A lot of hustle, which I think it's why they win in the market that they play in. Mike said something like this.
You have a respect for the hustle of the founder, and I think they respect your hustle too. They're actually drawn to that. At this early stage, when the first $1 million all kind of looks the same, you can get it from a lot of different places. I think they want somebody who's down to build alongside them.
As a founder myself, I never had a high degree of respect for early stage investors because most of early stage investors for the last decade were just what I used to call real estate agents running around in fancy sneakers, trying to play a degree of coolness for something that wasn't that hard of a job to do. It's great. This new class of emerging managers has to work a little harder. I think a lot of those have an operator background anyway, or have a very entrepreneurial spirit that drives them. To me, that's great because it allows them to win deals that wouldn't otherwise be able to win so early. I'm thinking of Pietro being able to get in $4 million caps for companies that would be worth well into the 20s if they were to be brought to an institutional investor. How does it do that? It's just likeness in terms of approach, in terms of hustle that you have to put into your craft. I'm a founder, I'm an investor. I recognize when other investors work as hard as I do, and I recognize when other investors are just coasting. As a founder, there is nothing worse than the stereotypical VC that takes 9 weeks of holidays a year. It's not that hard, especially early stage is not that hard of a job that you shouldn't actually do the work. I do think it's great. I think it's sheer hustle that they need to put in order to create these ecosystems. I don't think you need the money. I'm sure if you're an Andreessen or a Sequoia, fancy office, multiple spots, parties and whatnot, they're all great. But when I think about Owen trying to impress that LP, landing in the middle of nowhere and pulling together a happy hour for founders, I don't expect you're going to pay my drinks. If I want to be there, I'm happy to pay for my own drink. If you have to sponsor something to have people show up, it probably means people don't want to be there. How do these people pay their own bills? Though it's important. Like it's really hard, especially urban centers on both coasts, to be able to live on a 100K salary unless you had some sort of exit or side income. It's interesting to see whether it's a higher frequency and stacking more funds on top of each other. Early stage has to be scrappy. This unbundling is going to breed much needed competition in a sector that was stale. It's turning to be what it should be, which is a highly competitive marketplace, very liquid and thriving. We'll see how they emerge, but ultimately it's not going to be as much glitz and glamour as people think it is, which is great. It's going to drive away the tourists and keep those people that are actually interested in being at the same level as the founders that they back, which to me, it's extremely important. We've heard two classes of managers over the last few weeks, and it's interesting, right? Because they're pitching themselves and they are the firm. There is no one else. Even though they all say we somehow. We do this, we do that. Then it's like, how many people work for you? It's just me. They're pitching who they are, how they win. And I think that's very authentic and resonates extremely well. I do notice that people that they're not authentic, it comes out quickly because it's unclear what it is that they provide in terms of value. It's more a pitch to a customer, the LP, that is very vague. And as an LP, I cannot understand why they would win. They're just pitching me a fund, a vehicle to put in money that will hold a bunch of assets. And it's a little disappointing. Mike sharpened it for us and with his sentence.
Pitch the firm, not the fund. Too often there's, hey, I need a bundle of money to run this strategy versus this is why we need a new firm to exist.
It's going to be extremely important for folks to understand they have to graduate to a fund 3, fund 4. Doesn't mean that they have to go higher in check size, but they do have to have some kind of a vision as per how do they scale the value add that they bring. And I think Pietro had one of the best answers to that.
The proof of concept was the concept already. And so I may want to keep close to this concept as much as I can.
Essentially that he's not going to go up in size. He's going to keep it at 10 million for the rest of his career, which I think it's great to hear as an LP because I know what to expect going forward. And if you're going to tell me you're going to do a $10 million fund and go up to 30 and then to 50, it's a different kind of pitch. Now I need to know you're able to play across 3 different fields, 3 different games. Pitching the firm is like pitching yourself, and pitching yourself means knowing exactly what it is that you are doing. And I don't think that everyone we talked to knew what they were doing. Maybe they're figuring it out because most are on their fund 0, their very first fund.
Are there any characteristics or traits of those managers where you can immediately tell that someone is building a fund, not a firm?
I think we talked about this yesterday. It's pattern matching. As a founder, I have been in front of hundreds of venture capitalists at any stage of the fundraising cycle. I've switched sides and now I'm on the other side of the table. I spend time both with founders and with other venture capitalists and with LPs and everything else. So ability to pattern match what this person is trying to do, is trying to sell me as a founder, first and foremost. Like I am assessing these people when they come to the show from the perspective of the founder, I'm raising capital. Would I take money from you? Yes or no? In order for me to take money from you, I need to understand exactly why am I giving away a piece of my company. If I'm a good founder, I can find money anywhere. The issue is not capitalizing the company. The issue is maximizing the value per dollar received in function of the ownership you're giving away. Don't just take money from anybody. Understand exactly what it is that you need and then take money from these people. Try to convince these people to give you their money, to give you their value add. I think if somebody comes to the table as an emerging manager without a clear pitch for what it is that they can do, it's already a non-starter. As a founder, I don't understand. Or as an LP, what I understand is that you're going to give money to founders that don't know what they're doing. I'm a little bit scared about that. I would like you to give money to founders that have a very clear idea of how they're doing, whether it's because of lived experience or intuition. They know what's going on. And I think it's pattern matching, but it comes down to, is it clear that what the person is saying fits the person that they are? And who they are, it's actually what the market needs at that stage. With Mike, our favorite guest of this season, I think it was extremely clear that Mike has a talent network, that he can find engineers extremely hard to hire. He can convince them to work for somebody. If I'm a hard tech founder, if I need engineers, that is an extremely compelling proposition to take money from Mike. On the other hand, if I am, for example, take Elia and the Kashmir Fund, the exposure to like cultural idols, it's a little bit fuzzy. It's not really clear to me as a founder, how am I going to get that exactly? Is it in the contract? For every dollar you give, you introduce me to 5 celebrities? Or is it just whatever celebrity and product you have on deck? It's not going to be a one-to-one with the entire fund. As a founder, well, why would I be taking money from Kashmir? It's a little unclear. And again, like their check sizes are tiny, so it probably makes sense. Just de-risk it. Okay, whatever. I have 50K, 100K left of a $5 to $10 million raise. I will allocate it as an option. But I've been there. I've made that mistake as a founder. I've given allocations to people thinking they would bring value in the future, and they never did. And then I always regretted it later on because that money could have been allocated to someone else who was actually much more helpful, much more value add. I think it's just a repetition of having been in that situation so many times. You can tell if somebody knows what they're talking about because you've been there yourself.
You've been on all sides of the table. And so you have that context to speak to and understand what somebody in those shoes might be thinking. I think it's safe to say all of the managers agree that being an emerging manager is different from being a GP at a large fund. It's about managing the back office while building and maintaining strong relationships with founders, LPs, other emerging managers. From what you've seen, do you agree that the role of emerging manager is really that different from a role of being a GP at a large fund?
Oh, yeah. If you've never been in early stage, you will not understand this. And I've hired probably thousands of people for early stage companies. When I started like a decade ago, you're looking up to the logos and you're like, oh, it would be so nice to hire from the big shiny logos. Like if only I can get my hands on somebody that works at Google, my startup would be 10 times better. And then you realize very quickly that who thrives in a structured corporate environment is opposite of who thrives in a chaotic early stage environment. Emerging GPs are much closer to founders than they are to established GPs because they have to wear 1,000 different hats. If you are at a big brand firm, you're a cog in a machine and you do one thing and you do it really well. Maybe you're sourcing, maybe you're diligencing, maybe you're closing deal, maybe you're raising funds from LPs, but you're doing just one thing most of your day. Sometimes you may be like switching back and forth among things, but it's very much one thing. As an emerging GP, the context switch is relentless. You are pitching LPs, you're pitching founders, you're talking to lawyers about negotiating terms, you're talking to lawyers about terms, accountants, your fund administrator, all before 12 p.m. 17 calls back to back. You just have to switch it on. Oh, and I think put it well, doing a podcast right now. Right after this, I'm going to have to pitch an LP, which is great, same kind of energy. But right after that, I'm going to have to get on with a founder and I'm not going to invest. And then right after that, I'm going to have to get on with a founder and tell them that I will go to invest. It becomes a lot of context switching and hat wearing, similar to a founder or early stage operator, which is why I think those people are best when they come from this sort of background and we don't come from an investing background. I think a lot of the traditional construct of an emerging GP, so somebody that comes from a large established brand name fund, they tend to fail as they spin off on their own because they lack that structure that surrounded them. And so they don't realize that what made them great investors at the brand name firm is not what's going to make them great when fishing on their own. Now the deal flow is not as good. They're making mistakes in the paperwork. Now all of a sudden they're not actually keeping track of their portfolio. They're not keeping track of their LPs the way that they should. They used to have an IR function to keep everybody happy. It's the same as the Google employee going to work for the early stage startup, expecting all sorts of things to be built and in place when they're actually not. And so it couldn't be more different. Most LPs don't understand. They tend to over-allocate to emerging managers that come from a background being manager at an established brand name firm, because they can see that track record and they feel comfortable about that. The truth is you're cutting checks to people that have been working at Google and want to become a founder. And so after 5 years of working at Google, they try and become a founder. The success rate of this type of investments is completely opposite to what the typical pattern of success is within venture capital. The skill set you need in order to thrive in a structured environment, it's completely opposite to the skill set that you need to be able to thrive in an unstructured environment. And very few are the people that can make that switch. And if anything, I'm always very skeptical whenever one of our friends in the LP community sends us a manager to vet that has come from a big brand name. It's always so disappointing, especially when they want to do early stage, to see the level of naivety that they have when it comes to approaching, not just pitching a diligence call or an LP call, but also the feedback that you get from founders. The founders are like, I would never take money from this person.
What do you think is going to happen to these large institutionalized funds? Are emerging managers going to keep getting bigger and bigger and then start playing at the same game that these funds do and start competing for deals? What do you think is going to happen?
I think Pietro talked about this when we challenged him on whether he competes, and he was like,
Some of them have similar pitches, but they're just bigger. And because of being bigger, it's a bit of a different game, which makes it so that I never encounter them in deals. I know that we can fit into a void that has been created by these funds going bigger.
That is because you and I talked about this. The best companies will stay private forever, meaning that as bigger they get, the more assets their investors need to have on their books in order to be able to maintain a position. The big names, the indexes, the Sequoias, the benchmarks and whatnot, they're not going to do pre-seed or seed stage $500,000, $1 million checks as they used to do, because they can raise and allocate billions of dollars. It's just not worth their time. They're creating a vacuum at the earliest stages that is like sucking all of these emerging managers in, and it's giving the opportunity for these emerging managers to actually be great. Are they going to be bundled into firms? I don't think so. They're entrepreneurs and don't do well in structured environments. Are they going to compete directly? I also don't think so, because of what we said in terms of structural dynamics of the capital landscape going forward. I just think it's a greenfield opportunity, and we're going to see more people coming to market and carving their own niches. It's going to be very different from what the last 25 years of early stage venture capital was about. It's great for the founders. You don't have to kiss the ring to actually get somebody to pay attention to a good idea and provide some value to your cap table. These companies can grow quickly and create massive returns. For these folks, 1, 2, 3, 5% ownership is enough to motivate them to help founders up to the next round. You don't need to have that big of a chunk of ownership in order to be able to stay involved. And it's creating opportunity, if anything.
We've met a lot of managers throughout this process, but we've learned that not every manager should raise a fund. Passion and purpose should be the main factors driving that decision. Rafa, he didn't even have to raise. All his LPs came to him because they saw that passion in him. He was building a fund and investing out of it while he had a full-time job. And then he got his company acquired, and he's still working to this day. How do you distinguish between passion-driven managers and those who are just opportunistic?
Is it Ophelia that said what they must do is what they ought to do and what they will do
What I have noticed about my peers is I don't think they would be doing anything else. Like, you couldn't pay us not to do it. If you gave us $1 billion, what would we do? We'd probably just get back to work deploying those $1 billion into early stage startups.
I think it's easy to understand whether people are being opportunistic or purpose driven. The ones that are purpose driven don't care how they show up. They just care to do what they want to do. The ones in it for the glory only care about how they show up and don't spend any time actually working on delivering on the premise of what they pitch. Ever so worried about how they come across, the things that they say in order to impress the customer, the LP, and not as so worried as to be able to live up to the expectation to the supply side, which is the founders. I don't know whether there is a scorecard that you can use to assess authenticity. It's very much a vibe. And to me, it's the same as when you're investing in founders. It's very obvious after you invest in hundreds of founders to tell whether somebody's doing it because they don't have any other option or they're doing it was the most attractive option. And that's probably the biggest difference. People do this without purpose. They are doing this because they think it's very cushy gig that they can call management fees for the rest of their life and not hustle very hard because money sells itself. I don't think that the returns are going to be spectacular. Are they going to return something? Probably, yeah. But are they going to be spectacular? No, I don't think so.
There's a reason why some of the best emerging managers we interviewed didn't have a hard time raising in comparison to some of the other emerging managers. Yeah. You spoke to this briefly earlier, but emerging managers have to articulate their unique value to their founders very clearly. The must-have support is far more impactful than the nice-to-have offerings. Everybody has a set of LPs that they can give introductions to. Everybody has a network that could potentially help you build your company. But what are some of the pitfalls that you've noticed emerging managers have when they're trying to articulate that value to founders?
It's very similar to the mistakes that early stage founders do when they pitch themselves to investors. They try to pitch too much. I will get you everything and more. And I think that's the problem where it's not authentic. You should have a very specific angle. And so just when you pitch your startup to an investor, like, you have to have a very specific focus as this is what I'm doing. This is why it's going to work. This is why we're the right people to make it work. And I think as an emerging manager, be honest about who you are and where you come from. And just take whatever you can from that and translate it into what is the value you can provide, whether it's your operator experience within a niche. Ashley, I think it was really good. She's been doing comms for her entire career across a variety of roles in some really big names. She's learned so much about comms in that whole journey, in the whole experience. What does she pitch to a founder?
We get to know the founders. We ask them about their businesses, what areas of operating expertise would be most impactful. We go and find like the best possible people given the business that they're building, the challenges they have ahead. And then we do that matching, and where it's a fit, GC and Thrive shared their economics. So we've really taken the friction of capital off the table. It's a twist on an advisory model. Instead of the equity coming from the startup, it's upside coming from the investor. Taking the time piece, you have the filter of a top tier lead investor. And also we're only bringing people opportunities that they're really uniquely suited for. And then the access piece, of course, is solved through this model. And yeah, so alongside our angel and scout investing, we started building out the coalition network and connecting incredible women leaders with these early stage startups. And the feedback was amazing. I think obviously there are some founders who have phenomenal networks, and they're networks that can write angel checks. And so maybe they know how to build the cap table of their dreams. But for most founders, they either don't have the time, they don't want to slow down their fundraise, they're focused on finding that lead investor, they want to get that round done as soon as possible, or they don't have the networks, or they don't actually know what they're going to need in 6 months, 12 months, because they're in the moment when they're fundraising and not thinking that far ahead in terms of the expertise.
That makes perfect sense. As a founder, how do I value that? Is it worth 5%, 3%, 2%, 1% of the company? Because at the end of the day, I'm giving away a piece of my company. The ability for you as a manager to purchase a piece has to be commensurate to the value you bring. I wish that more people, more of these emerging managers that we've spoken to, were a little bit more focused and honest about their value add. Only a few have the humbleness to say, this is what I do and this is where I stop. And most other people's were like, I can do everything. Pepperoni, Coca-Cola, tiramisu for dessert, you name it. I'll do the extra mile for it. I'm going to do everything. And it's just not believable. It's just not something that makes sense, right? To an LP and to a founder. So I think it's just like having the confidence to say, I do one thing, but I do it really well. Pietro comes to mind. He said very clearly,
I am super clear about the fact that if founders want help with things like strategy, company building, international expansion, all of that, I'm completely useless. But when it comes to opening doors, making introductions, and helping with fundraising, I love doing it. It's what I've been doing for the past 7 years. I'm obsessed with it.
Maybe they don't think it's enough to justify ownership on a cap table. I wish they were honest and just kept it to, this is what I can do for you. And that's it. That's the pitfall. Because if I cannot believe what you're saying can live up to reality, there will be that dissonance that is going to give me doubts. And I say this all the time. If there is a doubt, there is no doubt. If you're a good founder, if there is a doubt about taking money from somebody, then you just won't. And as a manager, you're missing out on a potential deal.
What do you think emerging managers can do best in comparison to everybody else in the game?
Talent is the primary input to the venture equation. Hiring is the best value add an emerging manager can bring to an early stage cap table. Bring me the best people in your network. Convince them that what you saw in me as a founder is what is going to make them rich as individuals. I think that's the biggest value add that you can bring. Most emerging managers are entrepreneurs, operators. They have a talent network. That's what they can do for the founder more than anything whatsoever. There's other things as well, right? As a founder, especially first-time founders, they don't quite understand because they haven't lived it. What are the dynamics of fundraising? And so be honest with the founder and just explain to them how you as a capital allocator price an asset. How does it work in terms of like actual dynamics? These people are smart. They understand. I think most of the times you and I have been on a lot of calls together where I explain to the founder how they should think about their raise in terms of like actual dilution terms, next round, future rounds, ownership targets. And they walk away being like, oh, dang, I was doing this all wrong. I have to rethink it entirely. And what you can do as an emerging manager that you cannot do as a competitive big fund employee is be transparent and honest about what the dynamics of the market that you both play in are, because as an emerging manager and as a founder, you're much closer together than you are to the rest of the ecosystem. More transparency when it comes to fundraising dynamics. Hiring 100% helps you win every single deal if you can bring a talent network. It doesn't need to be actual employees. It can be coalition partners, advisors, angels that can give good advice, convince them to have skin in the game and put some money into this company. It doesn't need to be full-time employees, but it needs to be talent added to the cap table. And then the third can be whatever else they're specialized in. Like Sarah at Common Magic can be the editorial community angle, Rafa, product angle. That is their core specialty.
In Slice Fashion, Fabri, what did we miss?
I think we missed a ton of managers because this was just a quick and dirty MVP. We will make up on that promise next year. If you are an emerging manager and you're raising your first time fund and you're sub 20 mil and you want to get your story out there, ping us. We're real humans. We'd love to talk to you, hear your story and broadcast it to the world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the top lessons we've learned at Slice so far in 2024. Stay tuned for even more exciting episodes next year. Happy holidays. See you soon.